I'm excited, but I'm also very sad about this one. Just this one makes me crazy to no end. So this is the multifamily price fixing probe. This started in 2022 after a ProPublica article, surrounding this software that RealPage kind of developed, also acquired different companies. But essentially, the accusations here are that through this algorithm, prices are being fixed, and this is collusion, essentially. And so, RealPage, for me, I just want to quickly share a personal story. So, I was kind of excited about how much information they had, RealPage, when you could go to their website, use RealPage Explorer, look at all these multifamily listings, look at rents, averages. But what I noticed after a year of tracking them, just frustrated that I was seeing other series come out with price declines. I was seeing price declines for multifamily on realtor.com, Zillow, but there were never any price declines when you looked at just RealPage inventory. It was crazy. And so today I want to talk about this probe because there's been a recent development. And so this essentially got started back in 2022, but there has now been an escalation of this DOJ probe. They are doing a criminal investigation into RealPage. Jay Parsons, some of you may remember him on X Twitter. He left the company very recently, right after this was announced. He was a big person out there on FinTwit talking about the rental market. So just want to kind of go to the next here. And so this was the first ProPublica article where they talk about, your rents going up. Why? And guys, here's where I often talk about the bezel, and it goes back to what Jack was talking about the nickel story. If you think there's nickel in the vault, and then you value everything like there's nickel in the vault, but then what happens when you realize there's no nickel in the vault? And so when it comes to multifamily, you can think about that nickel as demand. And honestly, in the Sunbelt states, everybody thought everybody was moving there, but that is not at all what happened. And so you can see this quote from Jay Parsons, who basically says, "Never before have we seen these numbers when talking about apartment rents going up, almost 14.5%. And that is just huge amounts of increases that hit you in your pocketbooks. And what's largely being, what they're accusing these folks of doing is because the landlords aren't really looking at actual supply and demand anymore. So let me give you an example. Let's say it's the Orlando market, and let's say you've got, vacancy of around 15%. Well, what would people do typically? They would start competing against one another. They'd start lowering rents. But what you have here instead is just a whole bunch of folks acting in accordance and refusing to lower rents. And what happens then? People are out of luck, and they're either going homeless or they're paying the rents. Okay. And so this is a big story. Just want to kind of tie this in with the political themes as well. Also, the Lumi on Lumi violence, which I think we'll talk a lot about here over the next few years. And what do I mean by that? If you think about the Illuminati, was a famous book about, the theory that there were just a handful of people that really run the world, a handful of rich people. But here what you have, honestly, in this RealPage investigation, we talked about those institutional landlords in Travis's segment. These are the multifamily. But in reality, this comes from the Republican side. Harlan Crow is one of the originators of RealPages, of this technology. And you guys might remember Harlan Crow for his relationship with one certain justice here, Clarence Thomas. He was the one giving this guy some different extra benefits. So anyway, just kind of focusing for a second, that Biden has come out and said, to Travis's point about the Gen Zers saying that housing affordability is the most important thing to them. They're saying, for millions of renters, we're cracking down on big landlords who break antitrust laws. But in reality, likely this investigation is a little bit of Lumi on Lumi violence, meaning that you have some heavy hitters from both sides of the aisle, kind of backing these, getting involved in a tussle here from the institutional single family landlords versus these multifamily operators. But what I found was really interesting. There's a quote here. So you see, there's two attorney generals who have essentially started a suit, Washington, D.C., and the attorney general from Arizona. And what's important about this and why I'm bringing it up is because this feels very much like the AG settlement that the mortgage companies got into. What will happen is these AGs will kind of get together and decide. If you guys remember the mortgage settlement, that was 49 states that the top 5 had to agree to this attorney general settlement. I believe what you're seeing here are the beginnings of a similar type settlement that we'll see in the future. And the AGs will come together to essentially put this software on notice, because the numbers here are absolutely staggering in terms of, you know, how many apartments are on this software. I'm trying to think, over 16 million rental units. And why we're talking about this story today is that there was recently a raid in an Atlanta corporate landlord who is a part of this. And you know, this is pretty brutal. If you look at the way that Atlanta has been impacted, the software-based pricing affects over 80% of their rentals. Since 2016, rents in the city have grown 80%. And the higher vacancy rates have not driven prices down. And this is something I found as well. I was looking at Atlanta on RealPage, wondering how I'm seeing all these stories about vacancy, over 10% vacancy for even single family rental, hearing about squatters in Atlanta really being a burr in the side of corporate landlords. But here you have, you know, essentially rents not going down. And that didn't make any sense to me. And so it doesn't make sense to the DOJ either. And this is why they're launching that investigation. Another funny thing, so we use the words collusion, and I'm looking for the quote that I just thought was hilarious, where basically it said it doesn't matter if it's in the back room or it's an algorithm, you know, we're going to essentially, this is collusion. And so the funny thing that I wanted to note is that as they had these, apparently RealPage had these price advisors. So let's think the mob, let's think about the shakedown that we often see on mob movies, but they would send price advisors out into the field for folks that would not take the suggestions, so the software would make suggestions about how much you should raise rent or what you should do there. And for those that wouldn't take it, they would send out their goons and essentially strong arm people to make those rent increases. So what we've got here is a very mob style situation where you've got these, multifamily operators using this software. This software is telling you how much to raise your rent or how not to lower it, and what to offer. And that, and apparently one of the backers or originators is also been accused of, being in the pocket having one of the justices in their pocket. And so this is a very important story to watch. I also think it's going to be a big part of our regulatory cycle that we'll have after the bust. But this is largely why multifamily rents have not gone down and have stayed sticky, is around what I believe, has being alleged here, collusion.
All right, very good. Jack, you got some questions for Melody queued up there?
Yeah, Melody, have any of these articles, I know you mentioned Justice Thomas was involved there, but did you come across anything dealing with regulatory capture? Because, I'm sitting here hearing words like cartel and price rigging. All right, that doesn't work in a free market unless you somehow create barriers to entry for any new competition. A cartel that artificially inflates prices creates its own competition, because somebody's going to be like, well, I can undercut these prices and make the money for myself, unless that cartel also conspires to keep the competition out. And that's when it becomes very anti-competitive. So did you see anything about regulatory capture, maybe campaign contributions, anything like that in this research?
Yeah, so I think I kind of found the Crow connection right as we were getting on the air. But I think, again, this is a story we're going to follow for some time. So I think maybe even next week, I might do a little follow piece on the campaign contributions, because I do believe there was some mention about how originally, Trump kind of squashed like the DOJ investigation. They really wanted to, when RealPage was acquiring some other companies, there was some antitrust concerns there. And theoretically, this is what I've read. Again, I don't know, but theoretically, the Trump administration squashed that. And when Biden came in, this is why I was talking about that Lumi on Lumi violence. When Biden came in, they resuscitated this investigation. And then it is now, you had all that happen with Harlan Crow and Justice Thomas being kind of accused of taking those kickbacks or those extra, getting some free stuff, free vacation, things like that. And so it seems to me like this might be a little politically motivated, but in the same vein, it's also in our best interest that we understand we get some relief here.
Melody, I have a question for you.
Awesome. Okay.
And, I sit back and I think, okay, you basically said there's price fixing going on and people are getting physically abused.
I didn't say abuse.
That was my impression. They were getting bullied. Is that wrong to say?
I'd say bullied. They were being influenced. Yes.
Okay. I took it as like some hitmen were coming and they're like pushing people around, breaking things. Did any of that happen?
I have no idea. Maybe.
Okay,
we don't know. Yeah.
The point is this. Okay, so the FBI raided them. They're worried about price fixing for rents. But my question is what could the government do about it? I mean, it seems like the only thing that could even be done, other than locking them up and sending them to jail for taking advantage of innocent people, is price fixing and rent control. And so, Melody, do you think that price fixing, do you think that rent control is a solution?
I don't. This goes back to the same conversation we were having earlier about government intervention. Is this a free market, the chicken and the egg? But, that's where, guys, these people, they think on 20 different levels, game theory style, where, these types of things. I think, Travis, you're pointing to something very interesting, which is, as much as this seems like the DOJ is putting on its Superman cape and coming in here and is going to try to get, relief for the forgotten American, in reality, this might be just another effort. They're going to use this as a way to do more intervention. And as we've seen in New York, rent control can be very lucrative to those who, work with the government to get the subsidies that are, get these types of rent control agreements. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people in New York are not actually even listing apartments right now and creating a fake supply issue, because they know they can't charge the rents that would make it profitable for them. And they're just kind of leaving them off the market. And so I think you're pointing to how, we're poking holes in this narrative of, it looks like Biden's putting on a Superman cape. He's going to come out here, do great works, take these greedy old folks, to task. But in reality, just like the mortgage settlement, no one went to jail. And the same actors are out there doing the same things with CLOs, instead of mortgage-backed securities, even though I think that's still, there's issues there as well. And so I think we just have to be skeptical. And I believe that this investigation, likely, unless we don't demand otherwise, will be like the mortgage settlement. Nothing really changed. The forgotten American was not helped. And, the rich got richer.
And to the viewers, if you guys can, give some questions to Melody. I mean, I see this whole thing going back and forth about whether or not small businesses own 401k. I mean, that's what we're talking about in the so I got some information. Apparently, Michael, 24%, but I also don't know any small restaurant that offers 401k. It doesn't matter. That's not our point. Our point is yes, part-time jobs don't offer that. We're actually saying what you're saying. So I don't know why all the small business. I mean, do you want a job, a small business making 401k? I'm not sure, but if you guys have questions, shoot them up there. Let me see.
If I could, while we're asking for questions, on the subject of rent controls, there's ample data throughout history that shows that price controls don't work. Now, rent control is a very emotionally charged subject. Who could possibly be in favor of rents going up for the poor, right? You sound like a monster, all right? And it's very easy to forget that math matters. The laws of economics don't care about feelings. When you create price controls, you are blocking market signals. And price is a signal that the market sends to market participants about the scarcity of something. If we put price controls in place, we don't let the price of those things rise, then market participants are not incentivized to create more supply to bring those prices back down, and you end up with shortages. And ultimately, that makes things even worse for the poor. You end up with a housing shortage. So price controls are not the answer, not now, not ever.
That's a great answer. And I have this, guys. We have about 10 minutes before we do our roundtable. This is from KOV. Appreciate you again, KOV, and for your service to our country. Thank you, brother, and thank you for your participation. He's saying revolt, and I think this is right up your alley, actually, Melody. Revolt against a fraudulent market and Gen Zers, stop borrowing and begin to live a simple life to get off of the lending and finance grid. One must live below their means. Until then, enjoy chasing the carrot. Can you talk into his point there, Melody?
Absolutely. I mean, I can because I was a useful idiot. I was one of these morons that went and got a liberal arts degree. I mean, whatever. And then, had to go and also took out student loans and the belief that, what they told me in undergrad is you have to go to a great grad school. You have to pay this ridiculous money if you're ever going to be a doctor, be a professor. And, I believed all this crap. I took out the student loans, and then when I realized that I would never be able to be a professor and be able to pay these student loans back, I went into corporate America where I then believed the narrative of I saw my paycheck going up and up because I was young and thought, I was young and dumb and thought that layoffs would never impact me. But I also was not smart. Like Jack said, I was one of those that was doom spending between 2000, 2005, because I didn't have anything. I was already in debt. And, I wasn't living the American dream and I doom spent. And so, then I got myself into trouble. And so my whole point is that, and I realized that the reason I was working this horrible job that was sucking my soul out was because of this lie that, that one day I would be able to achieve all these things. But in the meantime, I wasn't making any quality connections with people. I was only at work. And so anything that I could have done to actually make that dream come true was sort of being sucked up by the job that I was in. And so my point is, when you stop participating, you stop using credit cards, you stop borrowing money, you just use the resource and you use less, then you can get out of this entire rat race that is there to make you a debt slave. And so I think it's very important that we stop believing these lies that we're told about, where we're supposed to go on vacation, where we're supposed to go to school, what our children are supposed to be wearing, all of these things. Guys, they're just saying this so you'll spend more money because our, GDP is 70% is consumption. And so I just think it's so important. I would agree with this. And Jack says it all the time, well, I'm going to get it wrong, Jack. But the message is live simply, and just that is truly what life is about. It's about your family. It's about the connections you make. It's about those quality experiences, not going to Spain on a vacation you can't afford where you're yelling at your spouse and kids because you're stressed out because you can't afford it. That is not life. That is not the meaning of life.
She embarrassed us, Jack. She embarrassed us. Your turn, Jack. Have fun with that.
Look, this is exactly why I end every video with live small and dream big. Absolutely. It is that that simple life, that is the key. I know so many people who make high six-figure salaries, and if they were to lose their job tomorrow, they would be wiped out, because it doesn't matter what they earn. They always spend more than that. And guys, income, it's not about, I know people are like, oh, if I get that promotion, I can afford that nicer car that comes with a higher payment at a higher interest rate and more maintenance expense. You'll never get anywhere if you do that. Your wealth is the cumulative difference between what you earn and what you spend over time. All right. And if you're one of these people going into debt to have nicer stuff, your wealth is moving in the wrong direction. You're paying to rent somebody else's wealth so you can live an artificially inflated lifestyle. You're going to pay for it on the back end. So KOV is right on the money here. I believe in embracing that simple lifestyle. I would say the responsible use of debt, which means at these interest rates, taking out almost no new debt whenever possible, paying off, maybe the old debt, if you were lucky enough to refi your house at 2.5%, congratulations, cling to that. It's going to be a long time before you ever see that again. But he's right on the money here. Embrace the simple life, guys. Happiness does not lie in some consumer crap that you're going to pay interest on if you buy it on the credit card.
All right, you guys, that is going to conclude it. And this is a wrap.